Hello and welcome to That's Just Wild with me, Steve Backshaw.
Me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
The podcast all about nature, wildlife, and how I once got my only venomous snake bite so far while out walking the dog on the Surrey Heaths.
Oh, out of all the places you've been.
I didn't know you had a dog.
This was quite a long time ago. I was walking the dog barefoot because I'm always barefoot, and I sort of threw a stick for the dog, stepped back, and I felt a sharp pain in my ankle and looked down and I saw an adder, and I'd been bitten by an adder, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I got down, I was looking at it, I was looking at the bite and stuff, and then my leg started to hurt. It started to really hurt. And by the time I got back to the car, I was kind of like dragging my leg with this
big lump.
And they took me into St Thomas's Hospital, and I was treated there, and obviously all of the medical students come in and everything. And they were also doing a television programme at the time called City Hospital. And the film crew came in because obviously they heard someone had been bitten by a snake and they had to film that. And they came in and they went, aren't you that girl
on the telly? It went straight into presenter mode.
Did that get aired?
Yeah. It did.
No way.
The footage is still out there somewhere.
Oh my God.
And we'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Just a heads up on this episode, it does contain some graphic stories. So if you are a little bit squeamish or you're thinking of eating your lunch while you're listening to this, I would highly recommend that maybe you don't continue.
Today, we are talking about parasites.
Ooh.
So whether it's brain-infesting fungus in The Last of Us, xenomorph aliens bursting out of spacemen's stomachs, or alien worms that infect Antarctic explorers in The Thing, parasites are clearly a subject of our sick fascination. Did you two get either of those film references?
I had to Google maybe a little bit.
I got the alien coming out the stomach.
Have
you seen it?
Yeah.
Have you seen the original?
And I actually always, every time I see a pregnant lady, think of that exact thing.
Oh my
that sounds
gosh.
so bad. Yeah, but he's moving under and you see hands and stuff. Yeah. Anyway,
wow.
Moving on.
You've got to address the fact that, Lizzie, you have clearly not seen the original Alien.
Is that a bad thing?
It's a terrible thing.
doing
It's
more
one
of
of the greatest movies of all time.
Sorry, Steve. Should I? Okay, I'll do better next time.
You shall.
Okay.
You must do better.
So
Seriously.
parasites. I just want to start by a startling fact that just kept on coming up when I was looking for kind of really cool stories for this. Around 50% of described species, both on land and in sea, are in some way parasitic.
Wait, what?
Isn't that
Strong.
bonkers? Out of all our lived species on our planet, roughly around 50% have some kind of parasitic lifestyle. And obviously parasites, and I'm sure we'll go into that, vary from, small bacteria and protozoa to some massive old tapeworms. So the diversity there is huge. But as a perception of what parasitic is, a lot of us go, gross, like kind of throw it out the water, don't we? But actually it's a huge part of survival, and it's a brilliant survival strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And parasitism, most evolutionary biologists would say, has been one of the most potent drivers of evolution. So we talk about evolutionary arms races, and we talk about, predators having to stay ahead of prey, having to stay ahead of predators, but hosts having to stay ahead of parasites is probably just as important, if not more so.
Right, yeah.
And, the evolution of things like the cell wall, the immune system, the skin we're in, possibly the evolution of sex, all of these things probably are driven by the presence of parasites and having to stay ahead of the damage they can do to a host.
Yeah. Just quickly before we jump into examples of parasites, I thought we could just define parasitism and maybe clear up a few things that I'm sure will come up today. But as we've already said, parasitism is a relationship where one organism benefits over a host, over another individual. So they may live in them, on them. There's lots of ways of
like
being
a toxic relationship.
parasite. Sarah, you've talked about this before. Do you want to talk about it?
No, carry on.
Okay, so Sarah's ex, parasite. Then there's commensalism. So this, by definition, where one species benefits while the other is largely unaffected. So a great example of this is, of course, barnacles on the face of a whale. You know, you see whales, humpback whales covered in these barnacles, and it doesn't really have any impact that we know of on whales, but the barnacle essentially catches a free ride and is able to move through nutrient-rich waters. Then there's mutualism. So that's the classic where, both benefit by working together. So bees and flowers are a perfect example of this. As the bee moves from flower to flower, picking up pollen, they then in turn pollinate the flower. So it's kind of a mutual relationship. Important just to define those things, right?
And all of those three things sit under the heading of symbiosis, which means living together.
Yeah.
So, quite often we think about symbiosis, and you say the word symbiosis, and what you're actually talking about is mutualism.
Yeah, yeah.
So people will say, oh, yes, it's a symbiotic relationship. But generally speaking, mutualism is a better term to use if you're talking about two species that are benefiting each other and living alongside each other.
Yeah, exactly.
The symbiosis as a title includes parasitism, which can be really, really bad for animals.
Yeah.
We'd be talking about how important they are, how massive they've been for evolution for us as human beings, but actually our understanding of them is a relatively new thing. So it goes back probably to Greek times. The word parasitos is Greek, and Parasitos became a character in Greek theatre and was a hanger-on and someone that lived off the wealth.
Hang on a
of
minute,
others.
a hanger-on.
Parasite, an X, again, clinger.
A hanger-on could be hanger-on and a clinger could be many things.
Are you on the? How do you constantly
anyone else?
treat our podcast as if it is free therapy for you, Sarah?
It's a dating
Come
show.
on.
There's a lot to be learned from animals. But what did people think before, though, Steve?
Well, that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because, obviously people have been suffering from parasites for time immemorial. But classically, people would have thought that, any problem we had within us came from within us, or if it came from an external source, it was coming from you being cursed from the gods. Yeah, absolutely.
So you deserved it. Karma, almost.
Absolutely. And it wasn't until relatively far down the line that people started to become aware of the fact that you could become infested by parasites by consuming certain things, or by being close to other people who were infected by certain things. Then it started to become something that was a real driver in human civilization. So in the Quran, we're taught that you shouldn't eat shellfish, we shouldn't eat swine, and that comes from the fact that both of those kinds of organisms are known to be infested with so many parasites. So there's a very, very good reason for it. It wasn't until the early 1800s that a scientist called Küchenmeister came up with the first experiments to actually provide evidence for how people would be infected by certain parasites, and it is gruesome. So what Küchenmeister did was he took prisoners who were condemned to death, and he fed them with what he believed to be infected meat, and then dissected their corpses after they were killed to show that the cysts he'd had within those meat had grown inside them into certain kinds of worms. Pretty grim, right? Massive apologies to anyone who wasn't expecting that to be thrown into the podcast at this point.
It's the start. Probably.
This is going to be this is going to be a shocking podcast, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's no way we're getting around this without a few nightmares.
Didn't Darwin also reflect on parasitism as well, and what the function of it was?
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of through the years people who have been religious, and Darwin was famously religious, who've struggled with the existence of parasitism. Because if you are to believe in a God who has created a world that is wonderful and pure, then why are there so many things that are frankly macabre and sinister and grim? And one of the quotes from Darwin is that he could not believe in a beneficial and an omnipotent God who could expressly create an entire group of wasps that raise their young inside the bodies of caterpillars, keeping them alive as they do so. And it was something he really struggled with, because he was a religious man, and yet he saw this torture being affected on so many animals. And like you say, this is omnipresent. This is massive. There are thousands of species of these wasps that do exactly that and that target specific hosts.
So obviously that area of study didn't come to light, as you say, 1800s?
Early 1800s, yeah.
So from there, I guess, were there any like main evolutionary theories that kind of drove then our further understanding of what that relationship looked like?
So that would be before Darwin's kind of, main work on evolution. So I think to begin with, it was just pure and simple proving that, a simple cyst or the eggs from a certain kind of fly or wasp could develop from an external source into an internal parasite. So that was the first thing that needed to be proved, because before that, people kind of simply thought, well, if you're infected with parasites, you're just a bad person.
Could you not be? You might be. You never know.
I just love how simplistic it is. You are a witch.
Yeah, I mean, I as someone who has spent their entire life traveling through, tropical countries, I have quite a profound connection to parasites over the years.
So much so you did a comedy show on them.
Yeah, exactly. Having spent an awful lot of my life infected with one kind of parasite or another, or having members of my crew who've had, some of the most horrific.
Okay, I have so many questions about this, because surely going into an environment, based on your experience, you're like, I know what I'm going to be exposed to and what to expect. So what parameters do you put in place?
Well, I mean, you can be careful, but you can't stop it. You know? I mean, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but my entire crew, every time we leave after having a protracted period of time in a tropical forest environment, we all take worming tablets. We get them from the local vets. I'm sure you guys.
Do you know? No, I haven't. Right. Okay, you've said that, and as soon as I've never taken a worming tablet, and now I'm re-questioning
Sarah, you
myself.
probably should.
She's got parasites.
I'm like, maybe it's not IBS. Maybe it's not IBS.
Actually, on
never
that,
questioned it.
do not Google symptoms of a parasite, because it can be anything. It's like feeling dizzy, feeling bloated, having diarrhea.
Lizzie,
you've got a parasite.
You said,
Sarah, you've definitely got one. I'm sorry.
I probably got a few. I mean, for one, this is like the worst podcast episode ever for me, because I am a proper hypochondriac anyway. So I'm going to go away and spin out over everything we talk about. But secondly, while I was researching this, it's come to light to me just how many, as you said, how many parasites that we probably have and don't even realise it. Have you guys heard of the Chagas disease? Chagas disease, it's caused by a parasite that is spread by something called a kissing bug.
Stunning.
So it's just come to light in the USA by a case where a 15-year-old girl went to go and give blood, and she was super stoked to do it. She was doing a great thing. A month later, they called her up and they're like, you've got Chagas. You can't be giving blood. So basically, you can't. It can kill you. It's really bad, and you can
why
stay.
Why is it called kissing disease?
So it's this little bug that climbs down to your bed in the middle of the night, and usually comes around your kind of mouth area.
Stop.
And it just like a mosquito, it sucks on your blood, but it doesn't spread the parasite from sucking on your blood. It actually spreads it from shitting. So it poos on you while it's drinking your blood.
Wow.
Right? And then obviously
On
you're
your mouth.
itchy. So around your eyes and your mouth and that kind of area. Then you may scratch that area. And if you get that in your mouth, in your eyes, in your bloodstream, then you basically get this little parasite that makes its way to your heart and can eventually kill
so do you kiss other people? And that
No, it's the bug, the kissing bugs.
It's because it could give you fabulous Love Island collagen lips from the sting,
or big swollen eyes.
It's not like a mosquito, like Sarah says. They're more like an assassin bug. You know what an assassin bug is?
Yeah.
So they're a reduvid bug, and they have this big kind of proboscis, this rostrum that they use to jab in. How people stay asleep when they're bitten by them, I have no idea. We studied them at the Tropical Diseases Hospital here in London, and they had a jar of these things with a muslin lid on the top of it. And if you breathe over the top of it, the CO2 that comes out of your breath makes them start stabbing their rostrums up through the muslin.
No.
It is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, but at the same time, horrific.
Pretty gross. This is the thing. I mean, I know I've already mentioned the diversity of parasites that you can get, but they are so evolved, aren't they? Obviously, they're very small, very, very microscopic parasites that you can have that attack, as you've already talked about, the host cell walls and are on a microscopic level, that bacteria, protozoa. But then they've got all these structures as you kind of go up in size and complexities, and then how they're able to finish entire life cycles inside of you as tapeworms or roundworms and things. It's just bonkers, isn't it? The variety of things you're exposed to or could be, as you know, Steve.
I think the
the
scary thing, though, is the idea that you could just have it for like decades inside of you and you won't know.
So I've got an example from this on my favourite parasite book, Parasite Rex,
Love
Inside
that
the
you
Bizarre
just
World
carry
of
that
Nature's
around
Most
with
Dangerous
you.
Creatures. I do. This is one of my very favourites. And so a man came into the Royal Perth Hospital in Australia saying he was tired in the summer of 1980. He'd been tired for a couple of years. And they scanned him and they found that inside him was Schistoma mansoni, which is a blood fluke found in Africa. They went back through his life and he had been in Africa in the 1940s.
Wow.
So he had been infected with that fluke for more than 30 years. He'd lived for, the majority of his life with this parasite inside him with no idea. And that is what a perfect parasite does. It keeps you alive. It keeps you healthy. You don't even know it's there. So it can carry on feeding. It has its host, its home, and you don't even know, just living within them. Well, actually, it is in the parasite's benefit to keep the host alive and keep the host relatively healthy. That is why, for the most part, parasites don't kill you, because if they do, then they need to move on and find a different host. So the perfect parasite keeps you alive, keeps you healthy, and you don't know that you've got it. I've had quite a few that have been the other way. So I've had dengue, which is horrific. Giardia. I've had a really, really bad relationship with Giardia because
I need to know some symptoms just so that I can reflect internally if I have a relationship with any of these.
First thing you know about Giardia is that your poo floats.
Okay.
It floats, it doesn't sink.
I've just had a realisation.
Yeah. And you have the most stinky and non-stop gas all the time. You feel rubbish. But I got it for the first time when I was working for National Geographic, and we were doing a round the world tour, and I was stopping off and trying to get treatment for it, and unbeknownst to me, I was being given the same treatment every time but under a slightly different name, and so the Giardia became resistant to it.
Oh God.
So I had it the first time for nearly 2 years. And
2 years?
I was ill for nearly 2 years. It was horrific.
Wow.
But nothing like as intense as malaria, which I've had twice. So malaria is one of the most profound diseases in the world in its impact on us as human beings, on our movement around the planet, and now today it's one of the most medically significant diseases in the world, with at least 1 million people dying from malaria every year, possibly significantly more. Great medical advances, the first ever vaccine, which could be a big leap in the fight against malaria. Having had it twice, it is utterly brutal. I got it at the beginning of this year in Zambia, and we were sleeping out on a platform in a bat forest surrounded by 10 million fruit bats. I got nailed a fair few times by mosquitoes. 2 weeks later, I got hit by it. And
when you say you get hit by it, what happens?
As it was the second time, I knew straight away. Okay. So it was in the evening. It was getting colder, and I started getting hotter, and I got the most intense fever out of nowhere. And it tends to last to begin with for about 15 minutes, and you are shaking uncontrollably, and then you plunge into freezing cold, and then super, super hot. And you just feel absolutely horrific. It's relatively easily treated if you're in the right place, which I was. The first time round that I got it, I was in a cave system in New Guinea.
Great.
And that was really, really horrific. And I got relapses from that. So every sort of 6 months or so, I would get that same intense fever out of nowhere. It lasted for about 48 hours, but it was really horrific. One of the things I find that is most interesting about malaria, though, is you break it down to where it comes from, and it's in the salivary glands of mosquitoes. And one of the most amazing things about it is that when mosquitoes bite you, they have an enzyme called aparase, which is an anticoagulant.
That means the blood keeps flowing, right?
Exactly, yeah. So if a mosquito has the parasite in its salivary glands, it starts to shut off the flow of aparase, which means that a mosquito that has the parasite, it bites you, but your blood starts to clot quicker.
So it can't feed?
Well, so it feeds a little bit. It feeds enough to spread the parasite.
Oh, but then it's hungry, so it keeps going.
It has to go to another host and another host and another host. And so a mosquito that is infected with the parasite, it changes its behaviour, despite the fact that it has no brain and it has no intention. It has evolved to make that mosquito bite more and more hosts and spread the disease more efficiently. How insane is that? And there are countless examples of, protozoa and of, microscopic organisms that will completely change the behavior of their host to make it more able to spread itself.
Yeah.
But when you have malaria full force, you want to die. It's like supersized flu. Everything aches, everything hurts. You can't do anything other than suffer.
Yeah. Do you know what's really funny that we're not really realising here is that the likelihood of us all getting malaria at some point is quite high, and that's probably just a standard in our industry. It's like, have you had malaria yet?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds actually awfully similar to some of the symptoms of COVID as well, doesn't it? The shivers, the shakes, the pain, the flu-like symptoms, and probably a lot of other diseases. So imagine if you've left the area where you've been bitten, it must be quite difficult for doctors here to even diagnose it straight away.
Yeah, well, the first time that I had it, I made the mistake of going to my local just general hospital, and it took them 3 days of taking tests, and they could not take a test when my fever was spiking. They had all of the kind of interns and the junior doctors and things coming in and poking me and prodding me, and no idea. And I literally checked myself out. I just left the hospital and went to the London Tropical Disease Hospital, who went, yeah, you got malaria, take these tablets. So to anyone listening to this, if you think you have malaria, if you're coming from a malarial zone, do not just go to A&E. Go to a specialist place, because they will get you instantly and they'll get you sorted.
Okay, great.
The alternative, though, in the animal world is you might rely on another kind of doctor, whether that is welcome or not. So I want to take you guys over to the South American Guafo Island.
Stunning.
Where you have beautiful seal colonies and cute little seal pups with incisions all around their bum holes. And that is because these pups have been infected with hookworm.
What's the setting? Is it like visible? Are we talking like microscopic level?
Visible.
Okay.
Scientists are like, why have these seal pups got big
butts.
gashes around their bum holes?
Okay.
And they recorded the behaviour. It's essentially these gulls that come in and they are feeding on the worms that are growing out of the bums of these little seal pups. So, I mean, in a way helping, but like quite maliciously helping. And sometimes, I guess, getting quite invasive, not necessarily knowing whether the worm's going to be there or not.
Is that a part of the process? Do the worms remain alive? Do they infect the gulls? Or do they get dissolved and digested?
I'm not sure, but I'm envisioning this from my grizzly bear guiding days, when you used to have the tapeworms in the bears, and often like at a certain time of the salmon season you will see these huge worms that are dragging behind the bears, and they'll often get like snagged on a tree branch and they'll snap, and so you'll see like pieces, you can literally lift up pieces of worm that's come out of a bear's intestines. And I'm kind of envisioning that myself as like a little bit of the worms around the poo of the seal, and then just opportunistic gulls going, I'll have a bit of that.
Like if you are eating your dinner, maybe save this podcast for later on. For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
You mentioned like behavioural change, and there's 2 examples I want to talk about. But in reference to your story, Sarah, there is Leucochloridium flatworms, a parasitic worm which actually relies on birds to be able to complete that life cycle. It's a really cool parasite. So essentially what they do is they target land snails, and as they're laying their larvae inside and basically feeding on the snail, they kind of grow in size, and those eye stalks on a land snail will essentially become full of those larvae. I don't know if you've seen videos of it. I would highly recommend going to see it, because it is phenomenal. Suddenly these very normal land snails have disco eye stalks that are pulsating and are full of colour.
Assuming they can't see anymore, or...
Yeah, I mean, everything is compromised because of these parasites. But those pulsating eye stalks now look like potential prey, caterpillars, are moving around the substrate for birds. So birds come and then eat them. They then ingest it. They then poo out that parasite, and the cycle begins again as the snail then goes back over towards that feces.
Is it not true that those snails, which are more active at night become more active in the day and tend to take themselves into higher, more obvious places than uninfected snails, therefore becoming more obvious to the bird, therefore having their behaviour completely altered by that parasite within them.
Exactly. It's behavioural change on another level. It's absolutely extraordinary. And the other kind of behavioural story that I wanted to talk about, I don't know if it's necessarily behavioural change, but it must be the weirdest thing. Have you guys heard of the tongue-eating isopod?
Oh, yes.
We're talking the fish world now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's an isopod group, the symbiotic isopods. And essentially, when they're young, they're all males, so they're hermaphroditic. And when they go into their adult stage, some of those isopods will turn into females. But during that kind of younger stage, they'll move into the gill chambers of certain species of fish, snappers.
Like clownfish?
Yeah, like clownfish. And also, I should say, in symbiotic group, there's quite a lot of different species, and they target different fish, right? So some of the bigger ones that you see pictures of, these giant isopods for tongues, so snappers or mahi-mahi, these isopods will go into those gill chambers, and at some point, and scientists don't know how they do this, but the males, or one male, will turn into a female. That female will then climb into the mouth of that fish and attach to the back of the tongue, using their back legs.
So gross.
Then that isopod will suck the blood out of the tongue of that fish until it withers, it degenerates, and then dies. And essentially, they become the new tongue of that fish. They can live there for years. The fish can often actually outlive the isopod, so they do still eat their prey, but the isopod is feeding on blood, is feeding on mucus, and in some cases it gets so big they open the mouth of that fish and it's literally the most giant isopod.
And you can see its little head inside kind of going, hello!
Hello! Isn't it creepy?
Is that mutualism?
No.
It's proper parasitism, that.
Full parasitism,
Because the fish lost its taste and can't enjoy its food anymore? Or...
It's a really uncomfortable process for the fish, obviously.
yeah.
It can still feed, and as I said, they can go on to survive it. You know, these isopods can drop off.
But then they not need a tongue.
Honestly, Sarah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because if I had an isopod for a tongue, firstly, no one would hang out with me, but also it would be extremely inconvenient. It's bonkers. The whole thing is probably, for me, one of the most extreme examples.
I think one of the most important groups of creatures that live a parasitic lifestyle are the wasps.
Yeah.
So there are an incredible amount. The biodiversity of different wasps that specialise in parasitising particular other species is utterly phenomenal. At least 80% of our nearly 8,000 UK kinds of wasps are parasitic.
Wow.
And around the world, there might be 500,000, there could even be 1 million different species of parasitic wasps. And they vary massively in what they tend to target. Something that completely blew my mind was last week, my little boy Logan has got into using a particular app. It's called Seek, which will tell you what individual species are. So you point the camera at the species and it tells you what it is. And he found this ichneumoniid wasp. It was obviously a parasitic wasp. I didn't know what it was. He pointed the phone at it. It was called Amblyjoppa proteus. And get this phenomenal little parasitic wasp only parasitizes the larvae of the elephant hawk moth. So it's not just a moth parasite, it is a parasite of one specific species. It only targets the caterpillars of that one species.
They're the caterpillars that like pull the head back in and then they have these great big eyes on them and they can make themselves look like a snake, right?
That's exactly right. And the moth itself is this giant, beautiful, highly coloured moth. But, you know, quite often you get wasps that will only parasitise spiders or will only parasitise caterpillars, but finding one that only targets one species that you don't see very often.
I was going to say, I've never seen one in the UK, but the wasp knows where to find them, I suppose.
That would be a great way to understand, surely, populations of elephant hawk moths and understand moths generally. I wonder how often scientists do that, look at parasites or parasitic wasps
follow it
on
backwards.
moths.
Yeah. Well, so what I have seen in the wild is tarantula hawk wasps. These are the biggest wasps in the world, some of the biggest flying insects in the world. The females will target massive tarantulas to lay their eggs in, so they will parasitise the adult. And what happens is you'll see the big female tarantula hawk wasps, and they fly around with these big curly antennae, tapping on wood, tapping on the ground, looking for the burrows of tarantulas, and they're searching for the smells. That's what they're in search of. And we have followed those wasps for hours on end until they actually find the spider. And then what happens is the most titanic battle in nature. It's beyond macabre, beyond creepy, and utterly awe-inspiring. You've got a huge, great big hairy spider battling for its life against a giant wasp with a sting that can paralyze it.
When you
with
say
one
big,
single
what are we
sting.
talking, like hornet size, or how?
Bigger than
how
hornets.
really?
Yeah,
So
they're
like
bigger
a
than
couple of inches.
Yeah.
Oh, gross.
They're enormous. I have been stung on the finger, and it feels like having a white hot needle pressed into your flesh. It's absolutely phenomenal. And every battle that I've seen, the wasp has won.
Really?
So the spider always fights back. They rear up on their hind legs. They expose their fangs. They're doing everything they can to battle off the wasp. And the wasp just will not give up until it gets that one single sting onto the spider. It's not going to kill it, though. This is the really important bit. It needs to paralyze it so that they can lay their egg onto it. It's usually just one egg. They will drag the spider, and the spider could be many times bigger than they are. So they get a hold of it in their mandibles, in their mouth parts. They drag it across the ground, usually back to the tarantula's own burrow, drag it inside, lay their egg on it. The egg hatches out, and over a course of weeks, the little maggot will eat the tarantula from the inside out, steering around the internal organs so that the tarantula stays alive and the meat stays fresh for as long as possible.
That's so painful.
And then the adult insect emerges.
Wow.
And when it emerges, that's when the tarantula dies.
Yes, exactly. I have got one that is even worse.
Go on.
So the cockroach killer, or jewel wasp. They're much smaller, very, very beautiful. They have emerald green and ruby red colours, and they go through the same process. So they're not eating the cockroaches that they're feeding on. It's purely to feed their babies. But this is the cunning bit, where the tarantula hawk wasp puts in that sting and paralyzes its prey. For the cockroach killer, the cockroach is so much bigger than the wasp that it wouldn't be able to drag it to its burrow. So what it does instead is it puts in a surgically precise sting into the cockroach, which doesn't paralyze it, but it removes its sense of self-will.
Oh.
So the cockroach can still move, and what the wasp does is then take it by the antenna and lead it like a dog on a leash
It takes it for a walk.
to a hole, lead it for a walk, and then lay its egg into it, which does the same as with the tarantula. It eats it from the inside out. Nature is brutal.
It is brutal.
It really
isn't
is.
it?
Yeah.
There's something like extra salty about like taking the tarantula back to its own burrow. It's like, don't be me. Like, you've already killed me, essentially.
Do you find it hard to watch the tarantula thing that you were saying with the wasp? It's not like a part of you that just wants to get a fly swatter and just be like, no, not my tarantula, because you love your spiders.
Yeah, but if you were going to do that, it would have to be a very, very big swatter, and there'd be
Case it
a
came at
mess
you.
afterwards. I have to say that as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as a naturalist, to see that is in some ways more exciting for me than seeing a lion hunting a wildebeest on the African plains.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
I have been so utterly hypnotised by it every time I've seen it that I've just wanted to savour every single second. Yeah,
Savor
No, I get
every
that.
second
I
of
do
it.
get
it's
that.
like being in the Colosseum and watching a gladiatorial contest. It is
guys.
really quite something.
So there is one mycologist that shares a similar fascination with you, and he's based at the Natural History Museum in Denmark, and he's called João Arujo. I'm probably butchering his name. I feel terrible about that. But a mycologist from the Natural Museum at Denmark is studying zombie fungi. And it's with the intention of using this, so taking this brutal thing in nature.
Is this cordyceps at all? Or is this something else?
Well, I think he's looking at a number of them, but the idea is to use this parasite in nature as a pest control for us to protect our crops.
Oh, cool.
So a more targeted version. So he's looking at like something that could get into your aphids or to any of the insects that would go and eat the world's crops. And of course, you know, with climate change and struggle to grow things in lots of different areas, this could be an alternative to pesticides. It seems like a risky business, though.
Well, that's really interesting because actually there are quite a lot of species of parasitic wasps that are used in exactly the same way, that are bred. They are usually genetically altered so that they can't breed any further, and then they're released and they target things like aphids and gale bugs and things like that damage crops.
Yeah.
And those parasitic wasps and flies will be used as a, kind of natural pest defense.
Yeah.
It's like a good thing. Terribly brutal, but a good thing.
But we should also highlight something amazing that you just mentioned, Sarah, is that parasitic fungi.
Yeah.
We talked about lots of species and invertebrates and vertebrates, but literally fungi, and I've already mentioned the name, but cordyceps is probably
It's
the
the
most
one
famous.
from The Last of Us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
go on,
exactly.
Lizzie.
But which I haven't seen either. Where have I been? I don't know.
Where have you been?
Have you seen that?
See, but of course I have. I'm like, you don't just not get filmic references from the past. You don't get them from the present either.
There's a theme
do
here,
you
guys.
just study? Are you simply, obsessed with your PhD and nothing else? You need to get out more, girl.
Have you seen it in first hand then, Steve?
Yes, yeah.
What did it?
So I've seen it a fair few times. I've seen it parasitizing spiders, and it was exquisitely beautiful. Because
Is that the one where it kind of grows over the spider?
Yeah.
So you get like this fungi growing in spider shape.
And you get big, the spider itself has gone completely white, and then there are all of these tufts and stalks, the fruiting bodies that have come out of the spider. We worked in Bhutan with people that use cordyceps fungus as a kind of panacea, as a cure-all, and that's on caterpillars. So you have the caterpillar, you have the stalk of the cordyceps, that actually comes up above the surface of the soil, so they can find it, and it's incredibly valuable in particularly traditional Chinese medicine. It's hugely expensive.
I'm absolutely not
Yeah,
shocked.
people
about
will
that.
take cordyceps, and I've tried it. You have it in like a really strong kind of
ate
whiskey
it?
like wine. Yeah.
I suppose it's just like a
supposed to be
mushroom.
like
It's
a
like a
cure for
mushroom,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen it once in Borneo, actually. It was it was a cicada on the side of a tree, and literally just walking along as you do, like having a look, and it's just kind of halfway up a tree. And you mentioned earlier about some of the behavioural impacts of parasites, and this parasitic fungus does exactly the same as we see in our invertebrates as well. It will make neurological changes into that host where it literally will go towards light to allow for that then dispersal of further cordyceps spores into the environment.
So it takes itself to a higher, kind of more optimum position, so that when the spores emerge from the fruiting bodies, they're going to be spread out over a broader area to be able to infect more bugs.
Isn't it incredible?
Speaking of something that blew my mind, again, like this whole idea that we might be infected with things that we don't know about. Toxoplasmosis, it is the disease, I guess, from the parasite that affects the mice to make them not afraid of cats. So it makes mice really sassy around cats. It is carried by cat poo, right? But anyway, toxoplasmosis has been studied in wolves around Yellowstone.
Wow.
And what they found is that the wolves infected with toxoplasmosis disease, they are more likely to strike out on their own. So when I say more likely, they are 11 times more likely to disperse from their pack and 46 times more likely to become a pack leader than an uninfected wolf.
How did they even study that? Wow.
It's over a long period of time, that 26 years of behavioural data that's been studied alongside blood samples from these Yellowstone wolves. But what's interesting is at any one time, a third of the world's population of humans also has this.
Okay,
so this is like another
Sarah,
one.
This is it.
This
There's
is it.
Three of us.
Yeah, and
you
know
are
what? Well,
infected.
So the studies in humans, the interesting things, it's this could be you, Lizzie.
mate.
You're more likely to drive dangerously. Could that
Whoa,
be you?
I drive a Volvo, so I'm
Speeding. No, but the other thing is they've linked it to entrepreneurial skills. So the idea, again, like the wolves, you're less risk adverse. So you're more likely to take on entrepreneurial roles and to strike out on your own as a human as well if you're infected with the toxoplasma.
And listening to this, there are a whole array of people who are going out trying to figure out how to get themselves infected and get minted.
Is there any research, Sarah, on those in kind of leadership positions?
Yeah. So there was a one study on college students and business professionals, and those with toxoplasma were more likely to either major in business or start their own businesses. And in countries with higher rates of infection, people were less likely to cite fear of failure as a reason for not taking on entrepreneurial activity.
Can we make a pledge now for all
That
of
we-
us to go and get tested.
Yeah.
And see if we've actually got it.
I've
I don't know if
definitely
I
got
have
fear
to.
of
Might
failure.
just get a
though.
blood sample. Sarah, you've definitely got it. Sorry.
I don't.
So there's also different strains, right? And
yeah.
I think this is quite interesting. How widespread it is very interesting, but how these strains travel over such huge distances as well. So I believe the strain you're talking about with the wolves was first seen in mountain lions in 1995.
the cougar one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They've now found that on the California coast in sea otters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so
How do the sea otters act?
so they think it's actually run off from cats, from obviously, as you say, that's the main source of it. And they think that an increase in runoff and an increase in cats is causing it to now kill off sea otters, as well as loads of other species that I'm sure we don't even realise have this. But the impact of that we don't really understand fully. But already we're seeing deaths in species like sea otters, and Sarah's bolder than ever. So
I really don't think so. I definitely have the fear of failure. I could do with a little bit of that disease, I feel like.
Well, listen, if we haven't had enough grim, macabre, sinister stuff already, I suggest that we conclude this episode with a gross off.
100%.
I.e., each of us nominate the most disgusting parasite they can think of, and we'll decide who the winner is.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay, so I am going to nominate the candiru, the famous willy fish of
Yes.
Amazonia.
When you say willy fish, I know that one.
Yeah, no, the reason I'm nominating this is because every time I talk about it, I get hammered by a bunch of people telling me, it's an urban myth, you don't know what you're talking about, you're spreading
Really?
nonsense. But I have worked with a couple of very, very well-renowned ichthyologists, and worked in Guyana, where we caught giant catfish, and you will find these teeny tiny, whisper-thin kangaroo catfish living in their gills. And what happens is that they sense the urine trails that are left behind from these giant catfish. They swim up those urine trails into the gills of the catfish, where they embed in the gills and they feed off the blood inside their gills. And when you catch them, these kangaroo just fall out into the bottom of the boat. Now, it has been talked about for many years.
These are the ones that if you go for a wee in the river.
If you go for a wee in the river, it will swim up and get lodged inside you. There have even been
Women and men,
suggestions-
'cause I know it's
women and
willy
men, very,
worms.
very much. In fact, actually, most of the confirmed cases have been women rather than
Really? Okay.
and they have these backwards facing spines behind the gills, so that if they should swim into your urethra, they get stuck there and they have to be surgically removed. There have been a couple of cases where there have been massively talked up stories that turned out not to be true, even stories of people who were standing on the riverside and doing a wee and it's swimming up the urine trail. That's nonsense. That doesn't exist. But there are confirmed cases of both women and men who have had kangaroo swim up and into them and have to be removed surgically.
You know what I'm going to ask you?
Go on then.
Personal experiences.
What are you asking if I
You didn't
had?
say no.
Yeah, moving on.
Moving on. I'm gonna go for a bit of a cop out. I'm gonna go for my isopod. Go
The
on.
tongue-eating.
The tongue
The
one.
tongue-eating
It does make me feel.
isopod.
It does
And
make me feel
please,
funny.
Anyone who's listening to this, watching this, whatever, please look it up, because you will cry at the same time.
First time I saw it, I thought that was a kind of, an urban myth. I thought that was something that was AI generated, but it's not. It's real.
Yeah, and the size of them, and obviously it's totally related to the fish species and the host, but please just look it up. It's wonderful. And also, if ever you do buy snapper or anything like that, or I don't know, whatever kind of host, check out their mouth. Have a little look in. Look for an isopod. Extra protein, I guess.
So I've got one which sort of grosses me out, but it doesn't affect us, which is kind of nice, but it's brutal.
Go on.
It's like a butt-eating fungi.
I love the butt stories.
I mean,
Sarah.
okay, so it's called Massospora, and it's found in cicadas. It's a fungi that is like a giant butt plug, so it grows around their bum, and it also, because it's a fungi, it releases lots of toxins. It makes them quite horny. So despite the fact that it literally eats them from the butt up, and they can have like a third of their body that is essentially eaten, and it's just this big white gumdrop of fungi, it still makes them then go out and want to have as much sex as possible with as many different cicadas at the same time, spreading it every single time. It makes the males act like females to attract other males over. They just lose their mind. But they also, it releases like a hallucinogenic substance as well. So apparently we shouldn't worry about these cicadas because they're just high as a kite the whole time. They're not feeling anything. But when it finally like eats enough of their body, it finally just disintegrates them, and it falls out of them. The butt plug falls out, but they're like a big like salt shaker that flies around the sky for a little while.
Sick.
Yeah,
I genuinely feel
dropping.
sick.
Do I win? Do I win?
I think maybe we should throw this out to our listeners. If there's anyone out there who is still listening and has not been violently ill and turned off and blocked us, if any of you are still listening, which one do you think wins? Should we leave it there? I think we should leave it there.
Let's leave it there. Right. Remember, you will have a very special Q&A episode coming your way on Friday, so please send your questions to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll get to them.
That's Just Wild is an original Fresh Air production. The producers are Eva Higginbotham and Emma Crampton. Your support makes a huge difference, so follow the podcast on your app of choice and leave us a quick review. It makes a massive difference for the whole team. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us at That's Just Wild Pod.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.